Glad to know you're still with us. For decades, China has been Africa's dominant economic partner, pouring billions into infrastructure, trade, and investment. But a quieter competitor is rising, India. While China builds roads, railways, and ports, India is fostering people-to-people connections, skill development, and grassroots industries. This competition is about more than trade. It's about influence, strategy, and the future of Africa's economy. With Africa holding 30% of the world's mineral reserves and the population set to double by 2050, the stakes are immense. But as China and India push their agendas, a bigger question looms. Is this a new form of economic opportunity or a modern-day scramble for control? Dishant Shah, partner, Legion Exim, joins me for more on this. Thank you for joining me today, Dishant.
Thank you, Perpetua, for inviting me here.
All right, so do you think India is really making significant inroads into Africa? And, what are the numbers saying?
Well, absolutely, especially if you look at the last 10 years, right? With the new regime change that has happened in India, they have been very much vocal about the Global South cooperation, and Africa obviously is a very important strategic partner for the Global South agenda. And our current Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, he has been very vocal about how important Africa is to India and to the world. In fact, you might know that last year, that is in 2023, the African Union became the 21st member of the G20, so which is now G21. And in fact, this year it's chairing the G20 summit. So that is the kind of importance that Africa has risen to in the last few years, and we in India are very much positive about it.
All right, so what's the attraction here, and why is it that Africa is not able to make use of its own resources to build wealth for its people?
Well, see, there are multiple reasons. It's an excellent question that you have asked here. There are multiple reasons. There is political will, there is education, there is the kind of support that it has received in the last years from the international community. But the things are changing, the winds are changing, and they're changing for good, actually. When we look at the last few years, there has been rapid industrialization that has happened across the continent of Africa. And if I take the numbers of 2023, the average economy expanded by 3.9% across the region against the headwinds. And this is a very significant number because the world, as in the rest of the world, was not able to achieve such numbers, right? And we have seen, especially when someone like me who is doing business in Africa, right? We have seen that, we have been there, that the things are changing in terms of education, in terms of aspirations, in terms of how people are seeing new opportunities within Africa and outside Africa as well. There has been rise in exports as well. There has been rise in foreign inflows, foreign funds coming into Africa to be invested. So things are changing for good. And I think that the next decade, or maybe 2-3 decades, are of Africa, right? We say this thing here in India that the position that Africa is right now in is where India was last 30 years ago. And if you see the journey of last 30 years of India, imagine what is the potential that remains for Africa in the next 30 years, right? So by 2020, 2050, 2060, we can see a whole different continent, and it's actually a much bigger opportunity than it was for India or China in the last decades.
Well, that's quite interesting, but that would not just happen, African leaders need to make that happen. But away from that, China has been accused of debt trap diplomacy in Africa. Do you share the same sentiment? Well, you're from India, so let's start with China. I'm coming to your country.
No, I will try to remain neutral here, Perpetua, right, and purely talk on facts. See, the thing is that India and China, right, both the countries, they have taken different approach towards making inroads into Africa. China has particularly is seen, and I think that is true to some extent, that it has a strategy of more of dominance, where India focuses on mutual growth and partnerships, right? Uh, the debt component that you talk about, it's not that just China is giving out debts, right? Even India is extending various sorts of financing options to African nations, right? But majority of our financial aid to these African nations is in form of non-recourse loans or grants, whereas China always have had some form of recourse, wherein it can lay claims on various assets of various countries in case they fail to make the debt payments. If we talk numbers, right, in the last 15 to 20 years, China has given around $150 billion in loans to various African nations, right? And so far, so good. Fingers crossed that no African nation has fallen into the debt trap. Debt trap. But when you look at other countries where China has been giving out loans, let's say Montenegro in Europe, we have Sri Lanka and Laos in Asia, they have faced the heat of this debt trap diplomacy, that is being that it's called. And Montenegro, for example, when it failed to commit on its debt, had to give away various assets and land to China, right? In Sri Lanka, we saw last year that there was a revolution that happened, and the sitting prime minister had to flee the country. The main reason behind this is that due to the debt that it owed to China, the inflation soared, and the country had no money to import food, and that enraged people. And then there was this whole revolution, and it took a very foul form, basically, right? So these are the kind of examples that various African nations and its leaders need to look at and maintain a sustainable approach towards taking on debt, whether they can service it or not, and what is it that they are giving out in return. Because see, there's nothing called as free lunch in this world, basically, right? So if someone is offering you money, there is definitely something behind it. So make a wise choice. That's what I would like to tell you.
Interesting, make a wise choice. But of course, like you always try to make a case for India. India is often seen as a friendlier, partner compared to China. Is this perception actually accurate, or is it, oversimplifying the geopolitical realities of India's engagement in Africa?
Well, see, India has been more focused on building capacity, right? So we just don't want to put our money in, take control of the assets, or generate some sort of cash flows via various operations, right? We want to go there. We want to take the people of the land, as in the African continent, together, and then build things, build businesses, whether it's building assets, whether it's developing the country, building infrastructure, whatever it is. We are going to take people along with us, and then we are going to do what we do, right? It's not as simple as uh, see, it's the long road, basically, right? It's the long road, but we are willing to walk that road. I would say there's this one very interesting report that I read, uh, where they said that India has been focused on not just giving financial aid, but it is also transferring skills and technology to its African counterparts as well, right? Whereas if there's some Chinese company or Chinese government which is involved in a project, all it will do is it will provide financial aid and support, but there is not going to be any form of skill transfer or technology transfer that is going to take place. So when the project is complete, right, when the Chinese leave, the local populace is going to be it's going to be in the same place where it was before they came. So that's not what we want to do. When we are coming into Africa and when we leave, we want to leave it as a better place than what it was before we came. And that is the kind of approach that India takes. I will give you a few examples. So recently, a couple of years ago, IIT Madras, as in Indian Institute of Technology, which is a very renowned engineering institute in India, opened its campus in Zanzibar, Tanzania. Right. They say that we don't want rather than African students coming to India spending a whole lot of money, we will rather create an establishment within your country, so that more people can take advantage of it. Right. So this is the kind of approach that we are taking. And And see, this is not about
All right, Mr. Shah.
recent days.
Mr. Shah, I'm afraid we'll have to go on a timeout now. When we come back, we will continue. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Shah, thank you too for staying with me.
No problem. Thank you so much.
All right, I'd like us to close this with this. There are those who are saying, look, whatever India or China is doing is actually neo-colonialism. What's your take on that? We'll close on that in less than 30 seconds.
Perpetual, to be honest, I have received these comments a lot that you are neo-colonialist, right? That's the attitude that which is very false, actually, right? Colonialism is not new to India or Africa, right? We have that colonialism is something that is shared between both the regions.
All right.
But I think when it comes to colonialism, it's more about extracting resources and wealth out of the nation, right? And that is not what we as Indians are doing there in Africa. We have been
right, Mr. Shah. I'm afraid we have to let you go now. Thank you so much for your time on the show today. I do appreciate it.
No problem.